This is the planet humanity has dreamed about for thousands of years. And the craziest part is, within the next 10 to 20 years, any one of us might actually set foot on it. Yes, I'm talking about Mars, the red planet. Now, you might be wondering, if Earth is already so beautiful, why do we even need to go to Mars? Well, I asked myself the same question once. And when I discovered the answer, it completely blew my mind. Because there's a terrifying truth we all need to understand. Earth will not stay safe forever. 66 million years ago, a single asteroid wiped out the entire dinosaur species. One impact, and an entire world disappeared. Now, imagine if something like that happened today. Human civilization could vanish in an instant. And that's exactly why some of the world's greatest scientists and visionaries believe humanity must become a multiplanetary species. In simple words, we cannot keep all of humanity on just one planet, because our future would be far too risky. But then comes the big question. If we have to move to another planet, why Mars? Our solar system has 8 planets, but most of them are either way too hot, way too cold, or they don't even have a solid surface. Take Jupiter and Saturn, for example. They're giant balls of gas. And Venus? Our closest planetary neighbor. Its temperature reaches around 450 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. And its atmosphere is filled with sulfuric acid clouds that could dissolve almost anything. So going to Venus would basically mean instant death. Mars, however, is surprisingly similar to Earth in many ways. A single day on Mars lasts 24 hours and 37 minutes, almost like Earth. It has seasons too. Its surface is solid, meaning humans can walk on it and build structures. There's also water on Mars, frozen at the poles and hidden beneath the ground. And perhaps most importantly, Mars is relatively close to us. On average, about 225 million kilometers away. But this is where the real challenge begins. Getting to Mars and surviving there is anything but easy. A journey from Earth to Mars takes around 7 to 9 months. Because both planets are constantly moving around the Sun, missions can only launch during a special window that comes once every 26 months. That means if something goes wrong after launch, there's no immediate way back. You're stuck there for months. That's why some people even call Mars missions a one-way ticket. Now imagine this. You finally arrive on Mars. The spaceship door opens, and you step outside. The first thing you see is an endless red desert stretching in every direction. Mars is called the red planet because its soil contains iron oxide, rust, which gives it that deep reddish color. And when you look at the sky, instead of blue, you see a strange pinkish-brown atmosphere. Then comes the first major problem. Mars has an incredibly thin atmosphere. How thin? Only about 1% as dense as Earth's atmosphere. And 95% of it is carbon dioxide, poisonous for humans. Meaning if you remove your spacesuit, you'd lose consciousness in about 15 seconds and die within 2 minutes. So surviving on Mars without special equipment is absolutely impossible. And then there's the temperature. The average temperature on Mars is around minus 60 degrees Celsius. Sometimes it drops as low as minus 125 degrees. That's cold enough to freeze almost everything around you. But one of the biggest dangers is radiation. Earth has a magnetic field that protects us from harmful solar and cosmic radiation. Mars doesn't. So dangerous radiation reaches the surface directly. Spending 1 year on Mars could expose you to the same radiation Earth would give you in nearly 8 years, and that dramatically increases the risk of cancer. In other words, Mars is a hostile world trying to kill you in every possible way. So if Mars is that dangerous, why are humans still desperate to go there? Because Mars may be humanity's backup plan. Right now, the company leading the race to Mars is SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk. Elon Musk has openly stated that his ultimate goal is to build a self-sustaining city on Mars with a population of 1 million people. It sounds insane, but when you see the technology being built, it suddenly starts to feel possible. SpaceX created a giant rocket called Starship, the most powerful rocket ever designed. It can carry more than 100 metric tons of cargo to Mars. But the most revolutionary part is this: it's fully reusable. Just like airplanes fly again and again, Starship can launch, land, and fly repeatedly. That dramatically reduces the cost of space travel. Earlier rockets were used only once and then destroyed, but Starship returns and lands back safely. And that single innovation may be the reason Mars colonization becomes possible. The plan is simple. First, unmanned missions will carry supplies and equipment to Mars. Then the first human crew, maybe 10 to 20 astronauts, will follow. These people will be incredibly brave, because they'll know there's a chance they may never return to Earth. Their mission will be to build the first infrastructure: habitats, oxygen systems, solar panels, water extraction systems. At first, astronauts will live inside prefabricated habitats sent from Earth, giant pressurized pods with controlled temperatures, oxygen supply, and radiation shielding. But long-term, that's too expensive. So scientists are working on something called in situ resource utilization, meaning using Mars' own resources to survive. And one of the smartest ideas is underground cities. Just a few meters beneath the Martian surface, radiation levels drop dramatically because the soil absorbs much of it. Underground habitats would also maintain more stable temperatures. Another fascinating concept is 3D printing buildings directly on Mars. Robots could use Martian soil to print homes, tunnels, and structures before humans even arrive. And then comes the most important question: where will water come from? Without water, nothing is possible. You need it for drinking, farming, oxygen production, and even rocket fuel. The good news is, Mars has a huge amount of frozen water. There are giant ice deposits at the poles and beneath the surface. Scientists plan to drill underground, melt the ice, purify the water, and reuse it. Once water is available, many problems become solvable. Food is another challenge. At first, packaged food will arrive from Earth, but eventually humans will need to grow crops on Mars. Direct farming in Martian soil isn't possible because the soil contains toxic chemicals called perchlorates. So scientists are developing hydroponics and aeroponics, methods of growing plants without soil. Plants would grow in nutrient-rich water under artificial LED sunlight inside controlled environments. In fact, NASA has already successfully grown vegetables aboard the International Space Station. Imagine standing inside a giant dome filled with green plants, while outside lies an endless red desert. It would feel surreal. And then comes perhaps the wildest idea of all: terraforming Mars. Terraforming means transforming Mars into an Earth-like planet, creating a thicker atmosphere, raising the temperature, generating oxygen, eventually making Mars livable without spacesuits. Right now, it sounds like science fiction, but theoretically, it may actually be possible. It would just take centuries, maybe even thousands of years. Some scientists have proposed melting the polar ice caps to release greenhouse gases and warm the planet. Others imagine giant mirrors in space reflecting sunlight onto Mars. Entire factories could one day pump gases into the atmosphere to slowly transform the planet. This would be a project completed not by us, but by future generations. According to current plans, the first human missions to Mars could happen sometime in the 2030s. By the 2050s, small colonies may exist, and by the end of this century, Mars could potentially have cities with thousands, maybe even millions of people. It sounds impossible, but remember, in 1903, humans flew the first airplane. Only 66 years later, we landed on the moon. Human progress is exponential. Now think about this. Children born on Mars would technically be Martians. They might never see Earth. And because Mars has only 38% of Earth's gravity, future generations could physically evolve differently. This could become the next chapter of human evolution. And then there are philosophical questions. Who will govern Mars? What laws will exist there? Will Martian colonies belong to Earth nations or become independent civilizations? Nobody knows yet. But one thing is certain: Mars is no longer just a fantasy. It's becoming a real possibility. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all this is what it says about humanity. We are the species that crossed oceans, climbed mountains, and turned impossible dreams into reality. Mars is simply the next step in that journey. So the next time you look up at the night sky and see that tiny red dot, remember this. Within your lifetime, there may be cities on that world. People living there, working there, raising families there. We are witnessing one of the greatest transitions in human history, the journey from a single-planet civilization to a multi-planetary species. And honestly, that thought gives me chills. Because we are lucky enough to be alive at the exact moment humanity begins reaching for another world. Stay curious, keep dreaming, and who knows, maybe one day, one of you listening right now will become one of the first humans to call Mars home.